Hey, welcome to episode number 2. Today I want to talk about watering. A lot of people have questions about how often, how long, and all sorts of other questions like what sprinklers work best, what should they be doing for automation, things like that. I've tried all kinds of different stuff over the years, and I do not have an in-ground sprinkler system, but I have something that's sort of close that I leave up most of the time when I need to be watering, that I kind of built out of a couple different things, and I'm going to go over those and show everybody what I do and how it's worked for me. So the first thing I want to talk about is the sprinkler. I have used oscillating sprinklers, impact sprinklers, the big wave style ones, the ones that you can kind of control that go around in a circle, the different distances. And about 2 years ago I found these ones. They're the Melnor Mini Max. And the thing I like about these, they're small, that's nice. I also replaced the spike with a different one. Some of them come with a plastic spike or a sled, but I like to be able to kind of leave it in the grass and not have it kill any grass underneath it, so I get these thin spikes and just put the head on that. But the thing that I really like about these is they're very customizable. So you see here you can adjust the width on the left or the right, and then you can adjust here on either side how far it goes. And then they even have a part over here where you can adjust how much water throughput it has, so that lets you go further or release more water in a shorter amount of time. So I use these right now. I currently have 9 of them set up across my yard. I have about 8,500 square feet, but I also do a little bit of the landscaping, so I'm covering probably just over 9,000. So I have one of these per 1,000 roughly is what I'm using, and then I have 9 hoses, and then I have those hooked up to the next thing we're going to talk about. This is the second important part of my watering system. This is what controls when the water actually turns on. These are beehive hose controllers from Orbit. I have 9 of them to match the 9 hoses and the 9 sprinklers. I have 2 that are like this, one on the right side and one on the left side of the house that control 4 different sprinklers. And then I actually have one in the garage that I take out through the front to add another one to the front yard that's a little bit too big to cover with just one. So I have a few different parts here. I did a 90 here to be able to kind of get it out of the way of the hose bib. And then this is a hammer arrestor, so that when these shut off, it basically absorbs any of the water pressure that would go back into the pipes, and hopefully avoid any issues with that, so that I don't have leaks or anything inside on the other side of the wall. And then this is just a 4-port manifold, they call this, so that I can split it out into 4. Now I only do run one at a time. I've tried to do a couple, and it really cuts down the water pressure, so you don't get nearly the coverage. So I basically just have it timed so that, I'll do this one for a certain amount of time, then go to this one, then this one, then this one. And I labeled them with a Sharpie so that I kind of have an idea of what they are: the front right, the side right, back center. And then within the app, I can just go through and set up the different watering schedules that I want. And it's all basically controlled for me, and I don't have to worry about it most of the time. Of course, I have to adjust it based on rain and stuff unless I have it in the automated setting, which I really haven't done a whole lot with, just because I like to have control over how much water I get and be able to kind of see what we got and then decide how much more to give it. One of the biggest issues that I found is remembering exactly where I put each of the sprinklers. Every time I mow, I have to pick them up, obviously. And so I ended up getting these plant holding stakes. They're just meant to be like supports. And they're just a little wire thing with a nice circle on top, so that I can easily pull them out when I'm mowing. So I do a strip, move it over, do the next strip, and then move it back, so that I know exactly where my sprinklers were setting. And then I can just put the sprinklers right back out where they belong without having to figure it out. At first I tried to use tent stakes, but with as thick as the grass is, it's really hard to find those. So I ended up losing them and just taking so much time trying to find them that I decided to do something like this. And then the second part, when I leave them up, like when it's dry and not raining, I was looking for a long time for something to keep the hose off the ground, and I just couldn't find anything that great. They have some things on Amazon, but they're really low to the ground and kind of expensive. So I found these at a local store, and they're designed for holding up Christmas decorations and things in your yard. So basically what I did is I just bent it. It's like a really heavy gauge wire. So I just bent it into this loop, and then I stick it in the ground and I run the hose along it to each of the points so that I don't have to worry about the hose killing the grass in those spots. So I basically, when I mow, I bring everything up off the grass, and I then put it back out after I'm done mowing or when I need to water. Like right now, it's supposed to rain about 1 inch tomorrow, so I'm just leaving them here because I'll probably do another mowing before I actually need to do any watering of my own. So that leads to the next big question. How do I know when I need to water? In the early days, I basically just waited for it to turn brown and then said, oh, I should probably water for an hour and get it to turn green again. But I found that preventative is much easier than curative when it comes to dry yard. So I have a mixture of Kentucky bluegrass, fescue, and rye that I have read needs about 1 inch for normal weather or 1.5 inches of water for extremely hot and dry weather a week to really flourish. So what I try to do is break it into 2 or 3 different watering schedules a week, depending on if I'm going to be doing 1 inch or 1.5 inches. And of course, this is assuming that there's no actual rain that's going to subsidize that. But so just making sure it gets about 1 inch during the, below 85, I guess, times, or about 1.5 inches when it gets above 85 is what I shoot for, and it really works pretty well. And I have different routines set up in my sprinkler automation that I can set, it's the normal schedule. We'll do it, I think, like Monday and Thursday or something like that. It'll do about 1/2 inch per area. Or if it's the really hot one, it ends up being about every other day that it will do about 1/2 inch to get that 1.5 inches. But the key is just to make sure you aren't watering, like 1/10 of an inch a day every day, because then your roots are just going to be right near the surface, just not trying to dig down for that water, because all the water is right there on the top, and it's not down in the soil, which would promote the roots to actually dig down into the soil and find that water, which also lets you go longer in between watering. So if you do get some dry times, you can go 3 or 4 days without watering without it instantly looking stressed and unhappy about not getting that top 1/2 inch layer of water every day. So you might be asking yourself, well, how do you know when it gets 1/2 inch of water? And you can do a couple different things. There's a tuna can test that you can do where you just put like cat food cans or tuna cans out, and you let it run for a while, then you measure how much got collected in those cans. You want to make sure to do them in kind of different areas depending on which sprinklers you have to make sure you get an average of how much it's actually putting down in those areas. And you can also get actual products that measure how much there is. I personally use these. Now it goes up to about 1/2 inch, that's milliliters. On this side it goes up to about 1/2 inch. So when it gets near the top, you've got your 1/2 inch. So I have about 10 of these set up, mostly in the landscaping, so I don't have to actually move them every single time. And then when my sprinklers run or we get rain, I can see about when we get 1/2 inch. So when it gets to the 1/2 inch, I dump it. And then I know I need to do that at least twice a week under normal weather, or about 3 times a week, filling it up under really dry and hot conditions to keep the grass happy. Now, for my specific sprinklers, if they're set to cover the whole 1,000 square feet, or even slightly more in some cases, it generally takes about 2 hours, maybe even a little bit more, to get to that 1/2 inch mark. And I also try to water early in the morning when there's less wind most of the time, so that I don't get, some areas that have a lot because the wind was blowing that way and some that are almost bone dry. So I generally water, 4, 5, 6 in the morning, and try to do the different zones all the way up until about 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. And that usually gets better results because the wind is less and it's also a little bit cooler, and it, gives it time to soak in before it evaporates off, as opposed to if you try to do it in the middle of the day, and, it would be much windier most of the time and also a lot hotter, a lot more evaporation. And then you also don't want to really do it at like 9, 10, 11 at night, because then all that is just going to sit on the grass overnight, and that can really promote a lot of fungus growth. You do want it to eventually dry off the grass after it soaks down in, so you got to try to time it appropriately, and you got to know about how long your specific sprinklers take to get the amount of water that you need so that you're supplying the proper amount. Where I'm at right now in mid-Michigan, this year has been very interesting. Generally in the spring we get, 4, 5, 6, 7 inches of rain, and things really take off, and the ground, if anything, is too wet a lot of the spring. But this year we got very little rain, like an inch a month, and it was already looking late July, August stressed that early in the spring. But now July has come and we've been getting a lot more rain. Most of the month of July we've been getting quite a bit of rain. It started off with about 5.5 inches, I think, between the end of June and early July. So it was just a ton of rain. That was almost as much as we got the entire spring, probably more. To summarize, you want to have all your areas covered by a sprinkler that has pretty good even coverage. You want to make sure you have enough to cover that area, and whether you move them around like I used to, that's a lot of work, or you actually get enough to cover it at all times and leave them set up when you need to water, that's personal choice. You can always go in ground if you have, the knowledge or the budget to go that route. I don't do it just because I already have my yard, it's established. I don't want to dig things up. I would worry about, the pipes and things leaking underneath. And if I have an issue now with a hose or one of the sprinklers, I just replace that component pretty easy. And under a lot of the year, I don't really need to water that often, so I really just do it as I need to. And second, you want to make sure to automate it somehow, because it's really hard to remember to water every day, especially if you're going to be trying to do it early in the morning. You can use just the regular digital timers and set them up, or you can get something like I have that connects to Wi-Fi and you have an app for it to be able to set it up however you want. It is pretty fancy, some of the stuff you do have available in that app. I haven't used it all, but you can set up like what type of soil and what type of shade, sun situation, what type of grass, and then it will look at the forecast and try to determine how much water to give each area. I don't know how good it is at doing that, but if it worked, that'd be pretty cool, because that's basically what I do in my head now, is just calculate, okay, we got this much rain, we need this much more, and then I set it up to do that appropriately. And the third important thing is to get enough water. So either by rainfall or by irrigation. Rainfall's always better. I'm always amazed that I can water for a month straight and it keeps it green. It's happy, but it's not thriving. And then you get, the first big rainstorm coming through, or a nice soaking rain for a day, and everything just takes off. I know there's nitrogen and other things that can come with thunderstorms, and that might be part of it, but I think it just has a lot to do with the natural rain just not having, the chemicals and things that the tap has. I have city water, and just allowing it to have pure water for the first time in, however long it's been since you've had your last rainfall. But whatever it is, natural rain is always best. So, if you have that option and you live in an area that you get natural rain, then you're lucky. And most of the time we do, except for, July, August here in Michigan. But this year, like I said, has been weird, where the spring has been just remarkably dry, and now the summer is actually the wet season. So just all depends, I guess. Of course, that leads to fungus, so now I got to use more Disease X and other things to kind of make sure that all this hot, wet weather isn't causing other problems. So I guess that about wraps it up for my watering system, and what I do and what I've learned over the years works pretty well. If you have any questions about any of the products that I use, or want to know about your specific products, because I have used so many different types of sprinklers and things over the years that I might have used something similar and can kind of help out with that, go ahead and post a comment and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. But otherwise, hopefully this helped you out, and a little bit more about watering and what to try to look for, and hopefully it'll help you have a greener yard. Thanks for watching.